Hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending where you are. If you want to let me know you can hear me by putting a hello in the comments or saying where you're located or what you're up for today, that'd be great. Today, we're going to talk about a topic that's near and dear to my heart, and that's having fun with the GMAT by scoring super high in the top percentiles. Today, we're going to talk about how to achieve a 750 plus GMAT score. We're going to cover how to do it, what you need to do, all the different angles, some stuff that might surprise you, and really get this down. Okay, so I hope you're excited to do this. It's kind of fun that we're going to play this game so hard today. And with that, let's get started. Okay, I'm ready for my slides. Okay, so here's our topic for the day: how to score 750 plus on the GMAT. Let's do it. Let's have some fun. We'll start off with let's talk about what we have to do. So glad to see you all here. Where you're from. So cool. It's great in this scene to get to talk to people all over the world that really have some goals that they want to make happen. And it's all so intense and thoughtful, and everybody's really gone for it. And we're really going to take it to a high level today. So let's talk about what we need to do first, because knowing what we need to do is going to really color what we do, right? Okay, so let's talk about the performance we need for scoring a 750 plus on the GMAT. Now, some of you might be aware of some of this stuff, but I think it's important to get it really clear. Okay, generally, not always, people score 750 plus on the GMAT with their foundation is a high quant score in the 40, generally Q49 or Q50, right? You can clearly score a little lower in quant and have totally ace verbal section, but as you may be aware, to really ace a verbal section, you have to get almost all the verbal questions correct. To get a high verbal score, you have to get 99 or 95% of the verbal questions correct, which can be pretty tricky. So generally, the key thing is to get that super high quant score. Okay, a 49 or 50 or even higher quant score. And let's look at some patterns here, okay? I don't know if you know how to read these ZSRs. These are people's enhanced GMAT score reports. But if you look at the percentage, we can tell the person on the left that scored Q49 missed one question in the second quarter, 2 questions in the third quarter, and 4 questions in the last quarter of the section. So this person scored a Q49 with 7 missed questions. So look, what does this tell us? It tells us we don't have to be perfect, right? To get a 750 plus on the GMAT. We can get that Q49 with 7 missed questions. But the second thing that's interesting to see is if we look at the bottom graph, we see the difficulty level of the questions the person got correct and missed. And you can see the line going up, right? And then going across. So that the line goes up, shows that the person in the beginning didn't miss any of those medium questions. Look at that first quarter. We've all heard about the first quarter. Why don't we want to miss the questions in the first quarter? Because they're medium questions. See, the difficulty level started off at medium, right? If you look on the left side of the graph. So that's why these people didn't miss any questions in the first quarter. Then they drove the difficulty level up and started across, right? Okay, so they drove the difficulty level up, and now they miss, the hardest question. Look, boom, in the second quarter, the person missed the hardest question in the quarter. Same thing in the third quarter, a couple of the hardest questions, and then even drove the difficulty level of the correct questions up a little more to end up, so even missing 4, in the last quarter, this person still scored a Q49. And we see something similar on the second test. None of those first quarter medium questions missed, every single one correct, driving the difficulty level up, and then holding the difficulty and only missing the 5 hardest questions in the entire section, okay? So this is the type of quant performance we need to score 750 plus in the GMAT. So you have an idea of what you need to achieve now, right? And the key thing, we're going to come back to this, the person in that first quarter when the medium questions existed didn't miss those. You don't see too many questions. Maybe a little bit at the end of each graph, the person missed a question at the level they were hanging out at. But look how the test kind of homed in on these 2 people's skill levels to find what their quant scores should be. Okay, let's talk about the same thing for verbal. Look how we see a similar pattern. So it's typical So with a Q49 and a V42, you can score 750 or maybe 740. If your verbal score and quant score are very strong, then you'll score 750. Or if you have a Q50 and a V42, you can score 750 or even possibly 760. So V42 is kind of our sweet spot. Clearly, a V44 is really going to lock you in. As far as I can tell, it's impossible to score a V43. But I thought I would go with this V42 because this is the level that a lot of people, okay, if you get that V42 in the high quant score, you're at your 750 plus. If you want to go even higher, then clearly you're going to push the verbal score a little higher. But look at we have a similar pattern, okay? Although these people did miss some questions in the beginning section here, right? Okay, but the similar pattern is they got up to a certain level, a certain difficulty level. They held the difficulty level, and they missed a few questions above it, right? So this person on the left missed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 questions to get that V42. So a V42 with 5 questions missed and a Q49 is probably getting you your 750. This person on the right missed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 questions and still got the V42. But and that would probably work with the Q50 if you miss 7 questions and get a V42. So a couple takeaways, right? You different numbers of questions correct will get you the same score. But this person, you know, it's funny. This person also got the V42 on the right with the 7 questions missed. But notice the difficulty level of the questions this person missed was higher. That's all this high difficulty level, and this person was getting. You see the difficulty level of the questions the person got correct. Well, it's about the same. About the same. I was going to say it's higher, but anyway, you get the picture. So, what are the takeaways here? What are the takeaways about what we need to do to get our 750 plus? One is we can miss maybe 6, maybe 5 quant questions, you know, 5 or 6 quant questions, maybe even a couple more, honestly. But let's just say something like 6 quant questions and 6 verbal questions and score 750 plus. I kind of would prefer you were shooting for 5 verbal questions missed if you're really shooting for 750 plus, or fewer, obviously. But something like 5 or 6 questions in each section you can miss. Okay, so that's the first thing. We don't have to get them all correct. But, okay, so you can miss the crazy questions, right? You can miss the absolutely crazy questions. For all of us, there's one that we don't get. You know, there's something, a quant question, you're really not sure how to answer it, and you just mull this thing over. You forget it, I'm out of here. You can guess on some questions and score 750 plus, right? So that's the first takeaway. The second takeaway is what we saw in their charts. Get all the medium difficulty questions correct, okay? And this is your game. If you want to score 750 plus, get all those medium difficulty questions correct. So what this means, obviously, when we're training, when we're practicing with quant and verbal questions, okay, you know, 80% in medium is not going to do you. You really want to get 95 to 100% of your medium practice questions correct. That's what you're shooting for here, okay? That's going to get you your 750 plus. Is getting all, when you take the test, if you see a medium difficulty question, you're gonna get it correct. So this is a huge goal for you. And by the way, you're not going to really see any easy counted questions if you're scoring at this level. This test is going to start off at medium, it's going to go up, and it's going to stay at that medium level or hard level the whole way through the rest of the test. You're not going to see easy questions. You know, so in your practice, I mean, basically you want to be getting 100% of easy questions correct, but you want to get all medium difficulty questions correct. So this is a huge part of your training. You're going to do your medium questions untimed and learn to get them correct. Okay, the last thing to score 750 plus, as we saw, you need to get some hard questions correct. So basically, we're building a foundation of medium questions. And then on top of that, we put some, but not all necessarily, of the hard questions. The more hard questions you get correct, the higher you're going to go, right? And to get into that Q49 or Q50 or the V42 range, you're definitely going to have to get some hard questions correct. Okay, so that's our goal. That's how we're going to make this, or what we have to do to make this happen. So let's talk about how to make this goal happen. Okay, let's think about something. 750 is a 98th percentile score. 760 is a 99th percentile score. So when you're aiming for 750 plus, as the slide says, you're looking to do something that 98% of motivated, you know, well-trained GMAT aspirants do not achieve. So what does this mean? It means your preparation has to be super effective, okay? You can't, like, there are things you can do and you'll get to 610 or 570 or even 680. You know, you can be sloppy with how you practice, or you can learn concepts that aren't really real, or you can learn strategies that don't really work, and you'll get to, you know, a decent, nice GMAT score that a lot of people will be happy with, maybe even 710, right? But if you want to get one of these top percentile scores, you can't, your preparation has to be super effective. You got to use good GMAT strategies that work really key things. You know, you have to know all the concepts, right? And the way you learn, the way you practice, all has to be super effective. But the good news is that effective practice does work. And you know, to kind of to hammer that point home, you know, it's funny, when I got into the GMAT space, there were a few there were a few tutors I saw, or teachers, and they had 770, 78, 780, 800 level scores. And I just got the impression, just from seeing that without knowing, that, okay, look, this is what a lot of people do. They score 800 on the test. So I just prepared effectively. I said, well, you know, how do I do this? How do I execute? It's like running, it's like any project, whether you're applying for a job or preparing for the GMAT or anything else, running a business, you just need to execute. So I just figured out how to execute, which we're going to talk about today. And sure enough, I scored 800 on the test. So so what caused that? Effective preparation, right? All it was is, look, if you do the moves and you do the, you know, do things that make sense, and you catch the things that don't, and don't do those, you're going to achieve your score goal, because preparation is effective. Okay, next thing. So let's talk about how to prepare for this thing to score 750 plus. Okay, one is we've got to learn the concepts and strategies involved in the topics, right? We're going to master one topic at a time. And here's the thing, you know, whether you're shooting for 610 or 710 or 750 or 780, you're really just learning enough to get your score. Okay, of course, you know, and here's why I'm saying this. A lot of people see the GMAT as you're studying a syllabus. So I'm going to learn a syllabus. I got to know combinations questions. I got to know probability, roots and exponents. I got to know sentence correction. Shooting for a syllabus, right? But a better way to think about it, if you're shooting, especially if you're shooting for this high score, is, well, you're not just learning a syllabus. You're learning enough to achieve your score goal, right? So so are we going to need to know roots and exponents to achieve our score goal? Probably. Okay, so we're not just checking off the list for the syllabus, we're checking off, I need to check this box for my score goal. What this also means is we don't have to learn 100%, because, okay, if we have a few weaknesses, learn everything for our score goal. But anyway, you're not going through the syllabus just to get through the syllabus and say, well, you know, they told me I needed to learn this, so I'm going to learn it. We're learning it super thoroughly, so we have enough skills and knowledge to get to our score goal. Okay, and so as we're doing this, we're going to learn each topic thoroughly, right? And it's fun. It's fun because you can check off a topic as a win. So let's say you took your baseline test and it was 610 or 570, and you say, okay, now I know how to do special quadratics. That's a win. And guess what? My score is now, if it was 610, it's now probably 615, right? And I learned one more thing. I learned some of the conditional probability. Okay, now my expected score is 620, and you can keep winning every day that way, right? Everything you learn is a win. You're not just checking off the syllabus. You're driving your score higher until you're like, yes, I can get this. I'm at 750. And what this also means is, if you're at 730 and you're not at 750 and you're wondering what to do, well, okay, we have to find some more things we can do, right? Just pull some more levers. It's a great way to approach it. You just keep driving your score up point by point by making one good move after the next. The next thing, and this is key, you know, when I talk to people who are having trouble achieving their GMAT scores, right? Everyone knows you need to learn the concepts and strategies, okay? But the practice is really, this can be where things break down in people's GMAT preparation, is how they practice. And often people practice with a timer going, or they don't really realize how important this part of it is, okay? In quant, we're going to practice untimed. In verbal, we're going to practice untimed until you achieve high accuracy and long streaks, okay? And so, I mean, look, if you're not achieving high accuracy, it's not going to help you to turn the timer on, because now you're going to just get questions incorrect fast, right? So what are you learning? But think about how much better it is. Okay, get the accuracy down, get those skills down, learn not to make careless errors, learn to see what's going on, learn to stick with the question, learn to analyze those verbal answer choices, right? okay? You're going to learn to solve the questions effectively before you shoot for doing them timed, okay? Then once you're achieving the high accuracy, then you do them timed, okay? And I mentioned here the streaks method. If you're shooting for the 750 plus score goal, you're probably going to want to use the streaks method. And the streaks method is when you're not just shooting for high accuracy, you're actually shooting for long streaks of correct answers, right? So at least 15 correct in a row. Let's say, okay, you're doing combinations questions. Can you get 15 correct in a row? Weekend questions. Can you get 15 hard weekend questions correct in a row? And you can see how different this is from doing them just for accuracy. Put it this way. What about 80% accuracy? I can get 4 wrong, 4 right, 1 wrong, 3 right, 1 wrong, 2 right out of 10. We just achieved 80% accuracy, right? But are you in control if you're only getting 3 questions correct in a row? You know, you're not, right? So, but if you can get 15 correct in a row, then you know you're pretty well in control in that topic. So that's the basics of the streaks method. You start off at 1. Can you get to 10? Uh-oh, I blew 8. Well, you start over again at 1. And you go up to 10. Okay, good. Can I get to 11? Can I get to 12? If you blow number 12, you go back to the beginning. You start at 1 until you get 15 correct in a row. It's a great way to practice, whether you do it timed or untimed. The streaks method will get you your score goal, I guarantee it. And then finally, as I was saying, you work on speeding up the test pace after you achieve high accuracy and long streaks. So basically, you're getting to the point where you would score 750 if you had all the time first, and then you work on speeding up so that you can do it at test pace. Great. Okay. You can see that that process is going to get you to your score goal. And, you know, I have some other, there's some blogs I have on how to practice verbal and some other things, some more specifics, but these are the basics of how you want to do this. You want to get that insanely high accuracy. And by the way, the same skills that work for high accuracy work for speed. So if you're very accurate in verbal, a lot of people have to say, well, how am I going to speed up in verbal? If you're getting streaks of 15 correct in a row, I bet you're going to be fast too. Okay. Let's continue on with some interesting stuff. Okay. Now, okay, if you want to score, you know, I don't know, a score below 750 plus, you can learn topics pretty well. You can learn formulas just by memorizing them. Okay. But if we really want to nail our score, we want to learn the topics from the ground up. And here's what I mean. You want to learn the hows and whys of each topic. Like, why does the combinations formula work? Why does the overlapping sets formula work? And the reason you're going to do this is so you can be flexible with them. I mean, think about it, like the combinations formula. If you just know the formula and don't know how it works, you can only apply, I mean, I know this is kind of obvious in a way, but you can only apply it to the most straightforward combinations, right? So, but if you want to do like 4 people sitting around a rowboat and this person has to do, you know, this person can steer and this person, only this people can sit on the sides, you can't just do a straight up formula. So you want to really understand the topic from the ground up so you can be flexible. And so as it says on the right, on the left, you can apply them in a variety of ways in a variety of situations. You want to be ready to apply these things in many different ways. Because look, we're scoring 750 plus. And guess what? The topics are the same, whether you're basically, I mean, there's some that maybe you skip if you're not shooting for a super high score, but basically the topics and the concepts are the same, whether you're shooting for a 550 score or a 750 score, right? So if you want to learn these topics from the ground up to score 750 plus so that you can apply them in any possible different way, because execution is going to be what makes the difference between a 650 and a 750, how you can use the information, right? The second reason we're going to learn the topics from the ground up is we'll remember them much more easily, right? Like a formula, if you know how it works, you're going to remember it much more easily than if you just know the formula. It's easy to forget, okay? So those are 2 great reasons to learn topics from the ground up. And let's illustrate this. Okay, here's a formula for the area of an equilateral triangle. The S stands for a side. So the area is a side squared radical 3/4. You know, it's not too long, but you can see how in the heat of the test or over a period of a month or 2, if you haven't seen it, you could easily forget this formula. But what if you learn it from the ground up? What if you learn the hows and whys of this formula? So let's think about equilateral triangles. Here's an equilateral triangle. 3 60-degree angles, right? Three 60-degree angles. Okay, so what if we split the top angle in half? Now we have two 30, 60, 90 triangles, right? Okay, so two 30, 60, 90 triangles, we know all about those. We all have memorized the dimensions of 30, 60, 90 triangles. And we have the, radical 3 over 2, half, and 1 for the sides, right? Okay, so what does this mean to us? Well, now we basically, if you notice, we've basically found the height and the base of an equilateral triangle, haven't we? So we can just use this formula, the triangle formula, area 1/2 base times height. We put these in, and you can see that we get to our radical s squared, radical 3 over 4, right? So now, if you learn it this way from the ground up, you'll never forget it. Number two, if they ask you in a different direction, if they give you the height and ask you for the area, you could figure it out. You know what I mean? If they, I don't know, if they give you half the base, or if they give you an angle, or they put it in a circle, you have the dimensions, you have it from every direction. So you can apply it in a variety of situations, and you'll remember it well. I mean, are you ever, maybe at this point, I think having just seen the slide, I'm never going to forget the formula for area of an equilateral triangle, and maybe you won't either. Remember it forever. Okay, literally 20 years from now, you're like, hey, you know what? It's the it's two 30, 60, 90 triangles, radical 3 over 2, half 1. Okay, cool. And the space times height, perfect. Okay, so let's check out, let's think about this. I got a question here. I'll give you a couple minutes to answer it. If you don't have any idea to answer it, great. But I have a thought for you. If you have no idea how to answer this, I want you to try something, because in the GMAT is really partly a test of just getting things done. So, whether you're a beginner in this, who has no idea to do it, or a complete expert who can do this in a minute, or maybe you've already seen it in the target test prep course, go through this question and think about how to get it done. How could I possibly get this question done? I'll give you a couple minutes to look at it. I see Dan Cummins just joined us. How you doing, Dan? Dan has some great information for you as well, I'm sure, if you've been to his site. But anyway, let's hit this question. I'll give you 2 minutes to take a look at it, and then we'll go through some ideas about it. And you can put your answers in the chat. Let's see what you think. Any other answers? And if you even want to put a little bit about how you got your answer, that'd be great. Okay, this is a tricky question. It's one of the harder questions in the target test prep course, and I want to show you an interesting thing about it, though. Okay, we'll first go over the standard way to answer it. And what we can do is we create a triangle. Okay, it says we have a triangle, side XY has a length of 13 inches, so we put 13 inches on one side. XZ has a length of 15 inches, and side ZX has a length of 14 inches. What is the height of the triangle in inches as measured from side ZX to point Y? Okay, and we can set it up this way, right? Draw the triangle, and then look what we have on the bottom. For the base, we have X and 14 minus X. So at that point, we can, oh man, it's missing a part. I don't know why it didn't show up in the presentation. But anyway, what we can do at this point is we could solve for X. Solve for X by, by creating two different equations for the two different triangles. We can use a Pythagorean theorem and solve for X and come up with the length of the third side, right? And that's all going over in the target test prep course, and that'd be the algebraic standard way to do this. But here's why I'm bringing up this question, okay? To score 750 plus, we could maybe use Heron's formula, but I'm not familiar with that formula, and guess what? I could definitely get this question correct. And so this is really why I want to, I think we can use Heron's formula in this. But here's why I'm bringing this up. Two reasons. I mean, it might be good information for you that this is as far as I can go with this question. Okay, this is the most complex. All the knowledge I have, it would only get me to this approach to getting this question. But honestly, we're talking about how to score 750 plus, and the reason why I brought this up is to show you that this is so much about getting things done. Does anybody see another way to get this done? Because we do have a base times height. Okay, how do we get this done? I'm going to show you another way, because there's so much, and the reason I'm bringing this up of scoring 750 plus is just learning to get things done. Okay, so how can we possibly get this done? Okay, here's another way we could get this done. 13 and 15 are not very different from 14, are they? Right? So look what we have here. We have basically, we can convert this into an equilateral triangle, can't we? It's pretty close, right? And look what's going to happen. The 13 becomes a little longer and becomes a 14, and the 15 becomes a little shorter and becomes a 14. So the net is that the height is just going to be a little higher than what we need, right? It's going to be just a little higher than what we need. So if we can find this height with this equilateral, the height of this equilateral triangle, we're going to have the correct answer. Now, you all know the height of an equilateral triangle. Now, we just went over it. So what's the correct answer? Does anybody, we just saw, what's radical 3? I mean, or even, what would be the square root of 3? Think about it. It's going to be greater than 8, right? Is it going to be greater than 10? Or you could use the Pythagorean theorem at this point, because now we have 7, 14, and 8. 7, 14, and 8. Look how easy this is going to be. Do use the Pythagorean theorem and come up with 8. Try it. I'll give you a minute. But now we've taken this crazy, question that needed a lot of algebra or whatever, and we found an easier way to get this correct. We found a way to get this done. Okay, and somebody's come up with the answer, right? So look, here we go. It's a little over 12. So the correct answer is E. Okay, so why do we bring this up? Because we brought this up to show you that a couple things. One, look how helpful it is to learn topics from the ground up. You know that equilateral triangle formula, you know it's a 30, 60, 90. You have this totally clear in your mind that and then you go, wait a minute, I can just make this thing into an equilateral triangle, and this is going to be much easier for me. right? So we're learning how to execute. The GMAT quant and GMAT verbal are tests of getting things done. So the answer is indeed E. Okay, and look what we were able to do here, right? It was so much of just figuring out how to get it done. So one of the takeaways here is when you're practicing for GMAT quant, you can do two things. One of them is if you're not sure how to answer a question, it's going to be great practice for you to sit there and ponder the question to see. I mean, we could have done the algebraic way of doing this, right? Okay. But let's say you didn't know how to do this. You just haven't studied that. You're not that good at algebra. Can you figure out how to way to get it done? Because that's what the GMAT is testing. And the higher you're going, right, it's really testing your ability to execute. It'll say, well, how many prime numbers are in this list? Look, your game is learning how to execute that. You don't necessarily have to know every little thing, but if you know the basic topics from the ground up, you can score 750 plus, okay? That's what I did. I learned the basic topics. I learned all this stuff, and then I learned how to apply them, and it got me to a perfect GMAT score, and you can do the exact same thing. It's learning to execute. So you're going to do two things, as I was saying. If you're not sure how to answer a question, try to before you look at the explanation, try to come up with a way to at least get close to an answer, because then you're practicing doing what you need to do to nail this thing. Because when you're sitting on the quant section and you're not sure what to do, you want to be in practice of saying, you know what, I can get this done. I can get this done. The second thing you can do is when you're answering quant practice questions, answer them more than one way. So you could do this with the algebraic approach. You could do this by estimating the sides and coming up with an approximate height. Maybe there's a third way to do this, okay? When you're doing overlapping sets, do them with the diagram, then do it with the formula. Do things in different ways. Get used to get your mind flexible so that when you're on the test, you can get any question you see correct, because your mind is so used to going, let me come up with a way to do this. Because the GMAT quant is a test of, can you come up with a way to do this? And that's how you're going to get to your high score, by executing this way. And once again, it can all be untimed. I've spent 2 hours on one practice question sitting there, man, I still don't really get it from the ground up. And then I finally got it from the ground up, and then I was ready to handle that concept in any way. Okay, so this is the way you're really going to nail quant, is by learning, getting at that flexibility, learning to execute, trying questions, the same question in 2, 3 different ways. I mean, you don't have to answer every question in 2 or 3 different ways, right? But if you can answer a lot of questions in 2 or 3 different ways, man, you're going to have that flexibility, and you're going to be ready to nail anything and look, we can get all but 5 questions correct, or all but 3. You can miss some of the hard ones, but as long as you're basically very good at getting things done, that's going to be huge. Obviously, accuracy is another part, but getting them done is going to be huge. So once again, we're seeing that how we practice, how we learn to execute is what's getting us to our score goal, right? It's not just learning the concepts, it's really learning to execute. Okay, let's talk about verbal a little bit. And verbal, there's a lot more to be said about this, and I say it in my blog post, we say it in the course. Say a lot about verbal, but 2 main things we're going to do, because we're talking about, okay, what do we want to do differently? Because we're shooting for that V42 plus. And there are 2 additional things and additional learning concepts, or you basically need to do this no matter what you're shooting for, but we really need to get them. One is pay close attention to details. Okay, verbal is so much about paying attention to detail. Did you see that word was different from the other word? Did you notice that the critical reasoning question used 2 nots in the answer choice? Did you notice that this reading comprehension choice doesn't say the same thing as the passage? You're paying very close attention to these details, so that that's huge. So if you're having trouble with verbal and getting that V42 plus, one thing you could say is, look, maybe I'm just not paying close enough attention to details. Okay, the second thing is we're going to use sophisticated analysis. Okay, you can get to a lower verbal score, an average verbal score. You can do pretty well in GMAT verbal by just using basic strategies and unsophisticated analysis. But if you want to get to that V42 plus, or somewhere you want to get this 750 plus score, you're going to have to be sophisticated in your analysis. So let's look at a verbal question and see how this applies, and that's probably the best way to see it. Once again, if you can put your answers in the chat. If you've seen this question already in the course, please don't put your answers in right away, so that everyone that hasn't seen it before has a chance to do it without seeing everybody else's choices before they have a chance to go through it. It's a pretty tricky question. Be careful. Once again, how about 2 minutes on this as well? Any more opinions? See 2 B's and an A. Just think anything. What do you think? What makes sense here? Do your best. It's definitely a challenging question. Okay, let's go through this and see what's going on. And I want to show you about the sophisticated analysis because this one is all about that and paying attention to details. Okay, for a study, people experiencing depression were placed into 2 groups. Okay, so we're seeing this, the exercise and the control group are these 2 groups people were placed in. The people in the exercise group were given support for creating and following an exercise program with the result that 50% of those in the exercise group reported getting regular exercise, while those in the control group were given no such support. After a year, there was little difference between the average levels of depression seen in the members of the 2 groups, right? So here's the conclusion. Clearly, exercise is not effective in mitigating depression, okay? So then we go to the question stem. Which of the following, if true, most seriously undermines the force of the evidence cited? So we're undermining the force of the evidence. The evidence supposedly supports the conclusion. So what's the conclusion? Exercise is not effective in mitigating depression. Why do they think this? There was little difference between the average levels of depression seen in the 2 groups, right? So, okay, this is funny because it's a real study, and our correct answer will actually destroy the study, and it totally was destroyed eventually. I think I remember reading about this back in the day. I was like, gosh, exercise really doesn't help with mitigating depression. I was pretty surprised, and then it turned out that the study had a big flaw in it. We're going to find out what that is. Okay, so now let's go through these choices. A, some people, we have some people picking A, E, B. Let's see, let's start off with maybe some of the easier ones to eliminate. C, the physiological effects of vigorous exercise are in some aspects quite different from those of light exercise. Okay, well, we can see that the passage isn't really talking about vigorous or light exercise, just talking about exercise in general. So this wouldn't weaken the argument because, okay, it doesn't say that the exercise people did vigorous exercise or light exercise, right? So C is out. How about B? A significant proportion of the members of the exercise group were considered no longer depressed after a year. Now, here's where we have to pay attention to details and use sophisticated analysis. It says, oh gosh, well, these people were no longer depressed. Does that change our evidence? Does that change our evidence? The fact that they were no longer depressed? What about the people in the control group? We don't know anything about them, do we? And it still says that the people in the control group and the people in the exercise group had the same average level of depression. So B doesn't really counter that, does it? They were still just as depressed on average. So for all we know, the people in the control group, some of them were no longer depressed as well, right? So B doesn't differentiate. It doesn't tell us really anything new it just tells us some of these people weren't depressed. Okay. Some of them weren't. Maybe some of the control group weren't either. Okay. How about A? The members of the exercise group did not use the same forms of exercise. Well, did they exercise or not? I guess they did. And the point is that the exercise was supposed, it's exercise is exercise. So we have to use sophisticated analysis here and see that even if they didn't use the same form of exercise, they did exercise. And so theoretically, if exercise helps in mitigating depression, we should have seen some results, right? So look how we're not just falling for these traps. These are all trap choices that really try to trap us. I mean, B, once again, some of these people were no longer depressed. Yeah, it sounds like a weakener. They were no longer depressed, but B is not correct because it doesn't change what we know. So see how sophisticated we have to be with this? You don't need to get this question correct if you want to score 570. But if you want to score at a high level in the GMAT, you need to use this kind of analysis and see that the fact that a significant proportion were no longer depressed doesn't mean that there was any difference, because we already know from the passage that the average level of depression was the same. So we only have a couple choices left. How about D? Endorphins, chemicals released by the body during exercise, can contribute to a person's having a positive outlook on life. So we need to be super sophisticated with this because this definitely looks as if it's correct. Gosh, when endorphins, give you a positive outlook on life. Does this undermine the force of our evidence? And I'll give you a second if anyone can say why or why not. What do you think? What's our evidence, right? The evidence is there was little difference in the levels of depression, right? So think about this. These endorphins can contribute to a person's having a positive outlook, right? But did it? Apparently not, right? The people in the control group had the same levels of depression as the people in the exercise group. So regardless of what D says about endorphins, the exercise didn't appear to do anything. This doesn't undermine our evidence, does it? The evidence is still there. And this is the theme in this question. That none of these choices undermine the force of the evidence, because they're just trying to say, well, people, they had different forms of exercise. They were no longer considered, some of them were no longer considered depressed. And endorphins actually make people have a positive outlook on life. Well, yeah, but it just doesn't really change what we know. Okay, all these things may be true, but these people still have the same levels of depression. So I don't great, endorphins contribute to a person's having a positive outlook on life. It doesn't make any difference. So we have to be so careful and detail-oriented and sophisticated to score high in this test. So does anybody see why E is the correct answer? If you can quickly type it in, if you have it on the tip of your tongue, otherwise I'll go over it real quick. At this point, E is correct. How about that? So think about why it might be correct. Yes, exactly. The control group probably, yes, exactly. Perfect. You see what happened here. Look at the detail. Look at the detail we had to see. The people in the exercise group were given support. The result, the 50% reported getting irregular exercise. Those in the control group were given no such support. Does it say that the people in the control group didn't exercise? It never says that. It says there were differences between the average levels of depression. So now, if typically 45% of people choose to exercise regularly, then okay, probably the people in the control group exercise as well. And this is exactly what happened in this study. The people running the study didn't count on the people in the control group exercising. They're like, oh, look, exercise doesn't help mitigate depression. And it turned out that, it wasn't exactly 45%, but it might have been 43 or something, 43 versus 47. You get the idea. They were very close numbers. And they were looking at basically everybody was exercising. So of course there was no difference. So we got a couple questions on this. What if B had said after 2 years, nah, it's still the same thing. It'd still be the same thing, because the members of the exercise group, we don't know what's going on with the control group. And so B cannot work, because we already know that there was no difference, and regardless, if it doesn't say anything about the control group, B isn't going to help us, because we need to find the reason why it's different. I saw another question. Yeah, okay, so there was a question on the previous question, but you get what we're talking about here, right? You see how sophisticated. Three things we had to do really for this question. Number one, we had to pay attention to details. It never said that people in the control group exercise. Number two, we had to be sophisticated in our analysis and see that, look, just these choices are not changing the evidence. Yeah, a significant proportion of the members exercise, or these endorphins make you have a positive outlook, but let's face it, okay? Let's face it, it doesn't change the fact that the results are the same. If the results are the same, then who cares what all these other things are, okay? Finally, we had to make a common sense connection, right? We had to execute. Once we eliminate all those choices, we can make the common sense connection and see that, oh my gosh, E is saying that the people in the control group exercise as well. Now, we don't know, someone's asking, we don't know that the people in the control group exercise regularly. You're absolutely right. But we just have to weaken this argument. And in the TTP course, we talk about this in the weaken chapter. You don't have to destroy the argument. You just have to bring up a reason. Like, wait a minute, man. Most people exercise. Haven't you just wrecked the argument? Or, 50%. Half of people exercise. Like, you gave them no support. You didn't. Did you ever notice that around half of people exercise anyway? Wouldn't that wreck the argument? I mean, your study's crazy. Did you control for that? And they say, no, we didn't. Oh, well, your study probably didn't work. So we don't need to destroy it. We don't need to prove it wrong. We just have to show a reason to go, gosh, I don't know. Doesn't sound right to me. Okay. Now someone's asking about the previous question. How do we know that the height, how can we, is a little shorter from when we move them down? This is a type of thing. Well, it becomes a little bigger. If you're moving the 13 up, you got to figure the height's going to become a little bigger because now we have a longer leg. If you think about a triangle, if we could keep making one side longer and the other side shorter, you're going to end up driving down the height. And then if you make all three sides the same, the height is going to go up. And this is the kind of stuff you need to see intuitively for geometry and think about. In geometry, it's great, once again, to get us that 750 plus, think about the effects of moving the sides of triangles and polygons. What happens if I move this side? What gets longer? What gets shorter? That's the kind of thinking you need for the 750 plus. You're not going to get all the way just learning the formulas. You got to be able to visualize effects. Same thing with this critical reasoning. What are the effects of these choices? We got to see, we got to be able to execute. We have to see the effects and forces of factors and statements, whether it's in a geometry question or a combinations question, critical reasoning question, sentence correction question. The score is 750 plus. You really have to be super aware of the effects of changing different things. And if, for instance, choice B in this question is very tempting, but the choice does not change a thing. Okay. And yeah, Pooj is asking, do we need to attack the assumption in a weakened question? Yeah, basically you're attacking the assumption. And the assumption in this case, basically that there was actually a difference between the people in the exercise group and the control group. Okay, let's talk about a few more things. Okay, so now, when you're preparing and you want to score 750 plus, how are you going to keep making progress? What if you get stuck at 720? Or, how do you get to the high level? One thing is, look, if what you're doing is driving your score up, keep doing it, right? If you're working on weaker topics or practicing, and your practice test scores keep going up, your accuracy keeps going up, keep doing it. But the other thing is, and this is what I run into a lot, is people say, my score stalled. I took the test now 3 times and I scored 720 every time. Like, what is going on? First of all, if you're really shooting for 750 plus, don't take the test 3 times and score 720 every time. But I guess it could be your practice test you're scoring 720 on, but that's just an aside. A lot of people do that. I see people use up their 8 lifetime GMATs and they were nowhere close to their score goal. Well, why did you take it? Don't take it. So if you want to take it once or twice or something to kind of get some experience, fine. But just taking it every month or something, maybe I'll hit my goal, is not going to work out, especially if you're shooting for the 750 plus score that almost nobody, very few people achieve. So what do you do if your progress stalls? You start pulling new levers, okay? Find new things to do. Go use a new course, use some new practice questions, learn new strategies, do something. There's always new levers you can pull, okay? And something will work, because the theme of this session is that effective preparation works. So there's so many levers you can pull. You can learn new concepts. Take more time on practice questions. Go back and analyze your errors. You will find something, and there's always another lever to pull, and that will get you to 750 plus, right? I mean, and maybe this could even be the most important point of this entire session is, look, you can do it. So if it's not happening, then find something new to do, right? Find a new way to practice. There's something about how you are preparing for the GMAT that's not working. And this applies to quant or verbal, your practice questions, everything. How you're preparing you just change that, because that's basically what's not working. Okay, if you're at 720, you're not getting 750, 30 points to go. What do I have to do? Now, one lever that a lot of people don't necessarily think of is a psychology lever. Okay, and I've worked with a lot of students on this. This can really make a big difference. So, because your psychology affects your results. So one thing is to develop a growth mindset. Got to have a growth mindset. And a growth mindset is a mindset that you can improve your basic skills. You can improve your analytical skills. You can improve your pattern recognition skills. You can improve your short-term memory. All these things are improvable, okay? It's funny, I worked on the trading floor for years, and my reaction time was pretty slow before that. And the whole thing on the trading floor was to react. man, after doing that for a few years, I never would have thought my reaction time to be so fast. And then I did a reaction time test somewhere. I was like, oh my gosh, it's so fast, because I just sat there for years reacting. Okay, so whatever you think you can't do, my message to you is, I think you can. I think you can learn how to do it, because our brains are plastic, our mind, we develop in so many ways. So any skill you don't have the growth mindset that you can develop that skill. That's going to be the foundation here, right? I want to get 750 plus. The foundation is believing you can do it. The second thing is address issues that may be holding you back. This is common too, So one is, what do I believe about myself? We can have a self-image that actually can keep us from achieving our score goal. Oh, I literally had a student who said, I'm a dumb guy and I'm not going to score very high in this test, and it's just going to prove to me what I believe about myself. I said, whoa. He ended up going for therapy and scoring above 700, right? He achieved his score goal, but to do that, he literally had to go to therapy and decide. And he would say the smartest things, the most insightful things to me. I said, did you just hear what you said? So what you believe about yourself can be your image of your ability, your image of what you deserve, all kinds of things. Do I deserve to score high in this test? So if you're having trouble going higher, think, well, what do I think about myself or what I deserve, things like that. What makes sense to me, what makes sense for me. I had to do a lot of this myself. I did so much of this when I was preparing for the GMAT. Another thing is inner conflict, and I've seen this just release people. Okay, and inner conflict is when you're conflicted about something internally. So let's say you want to score 750 on the GMAT, but you have a conflict with that. Like one person told me, I don't want to really score high in this test because then I'll appear arrogant. Well, of course he was having trouble scoring high in the test because he's worried about appearing arrogant. Another person was worried, if I score 760 on the GMAT, I'm going to apply to business school, and then I'll have to quit my job that I like. So of course he just kept scoring 720, 720, 720 over and over. And finally he went through all his inner conflicts and he said that was the biggest one. He went through different ones. Why don't I want to score 760 on the test? All these, and he was released. He went and took the GMAT, he scored 760. He said, I didn't even know it felt easy. And this has happened to multiple people, okay, that I've known of, that when they go through and find these inner conflicts, suddenly the test seems much easier because they were holding themselves back the whole time. Okay, so if you're having trouble increasing your score, no matter what you do, gosh, not increasing, there could be a major inner conflict. And think about what it could be. You can ask yourself, why would I not want to score 760 on this test? Why wouldn't I want to get this question correct? Some people get angry at the questions, they miss them on purpose. Some people are, I don't know, they don't want to be pressured in business school, so they mess up the test. There's so many reasons why you could have inner conflict. Me personally, I was messing up quant because I was angry at my 4th grade math teacher. I discovered that, okay? We can have all kinds of stuff. And once you deal with that, all of a sudden, gosh, the quant is much easier because you're not fighting yourself anymore. So the psychology lever can be huge. I work with this on numerous people, and they found that once they change their psychology, their scores went up much more easily, okay? So what's the theme here? The theme here is that effective preparation works. So if you want to score 750 on the GMAT, really think about how are you preparing for the GMAT, right? Are you doing practice questions on time? Are you really being detail oriented? Are you working on your psychology? And are you doing everything thoroughly? Because to do things thoroughly, you need to get to this high level on the GMAT, to score this high percentile, 750, 760, whatever, 780 score. Everything has to be on. You have to be very detailed in what you do. This is just like running a business. If you want to run a very successful business, you have to be super detailed. If you want to, have that newsstand on the corner do okay, and you don't really care as long as the people walking by a magazine now and then, you don't have to be as detailed. But even in that situation, the more detailed you are, the better you position your merchandise or whatever, your business is going to go better. And this is the same thing here. So just think about effective preparation work. And if I want to get this score, my preparation has to be effective and on in every way. Okay. So now, do we have any questions? Any questions about preparation and different types of questions? I don't know. What type of questions to use? Anything, think about details. What comes to mind that you're still wondering about at this point? Okay, yeah. So someone's asking how to address careless errors. That's a great question, and you're not gonna, so much of scoring high in this test is about execution. You can learn a lot of grammar rules or quant concepts. You can learn all the reading comprehension strategies you want. But if you're making careless errors, how are you going to get to your score goal, right? So one of the things is just on-time practice and using the streaks method is really going to help a lot, right? So if you're doing your practice time, then you're not really practicing that accuracy, right? You're just saying, okay, I got to get these questions done in time, whatever happens. But if you focus on accuracy first, that's going to help a lot. There's another thing is to just be super careful as you're answering the questions and learn what you do that messes you up. And this is huge. For me, one of the things I would, if I was doing mental math, I would add 26 and 26 and get 56. I learned that I was doing that, right? So once I learned that I was doing that, then when I was adding 24 and 24, I'd say, this is what you do. You're just about to say 24 plus 24 equals 44. Don't do it, okay? And catch myself. Another thing I personally do is when I'm working on a problem and I get near the end, I get pretty excited. So I've done all the hard work, you figured out what equation to use, gone through my matrix or whatever it is, and I get to the final part and I blow it there. So I know I do that, okay? So now when I get to the final part of a question, I slow down and go, okay, this is where you're going to mess up. Don't get too excited. You have to do one more thing to get this question done. So take your time. So I know what I do. So those are two things: work on the accuracy when you're practicing, and learn what you do. On the Target Test Prep website, we have a blog on how to increase your accuracy on the GMAT. You can find about maybe 10 more tips. Those are two big ones. I'd say one final one is to work on their psychology, because careless errors can be a product of your psychology when you're answering the questions. If you think, well, this doesn't really matter, or I don't really want to get this, I'm angry at this question, you can get it wrong for that reason as well. Okay. How do I go about the first 10 questions on the exam? The first 10 questions are medium questions, okay? Or some of them are. As we saw on the difficulty charts, you want to handle them the way you would handle any other medium question. And you can see medium hard questions that the difficulty is going to bounce up and down as you're taking the test, even if you're getting all the questions correct. So the answer for the first 10 questions is get medium questions correct, which those are. Don't spend extra time in them. Learn to get medium questions correct, then you get the first 10 questions correct. Okay. We got a few more. Let's see. How many hours should we practice per day? Typically people train maybe 15 to 20 hours a week is pretty typical. If you do 2 hours a day on weekdays and 5 hours a day on each weekend day, that's a total of that's 20 hours. If you do 4 hours on each weekend day, that's 18 hours. That's probably pretty good. It depends on you. If you're studying full time, you could do 6 hours a day, maybe 3 in the morning and 3 in the evening. That could turn out to be too much. But anyway, something like 2 hours on weekdays and maybe 4 to 5 or 3 to 5 hours on the weekend. How to improve after V38? Yeah, that's a great question. Honestly, I have a whole video on that. If you go on YouTube and say V38 to V40 plus, you can watch the video. But a lot of it is once you're going to learn more concepts and make sure you fill in your knowledge gaps, okay? And then you're going to practice, as we were talking about. Practice untimed and carefully analyze the choices and achieve high accuracy in practice is huge. And if you miss a question, go and address whatever it is. So if you're not getting to 100% accuracy in question, or your streaks aren't 15 questions long, figure out why you're missing questions and address it. Whether it's a knowledge gap or an execution gap, you got to get to close to 100%. Because in verbal, you're not going to get above 40. To get above 40, you got to be in 80, 85% of medium and hard questions, right? So you got to be learning to get 90 to 100% of your medium questions correct. That's your goal. And when when you're practicing. So there's your basic goal. And how are you going to do that? Streaks method and addressing every issue that caused you to miss a question. Okay. Just keep telling yourselves we can't. Yeah, so as far as why, exactly, you could say why. Well, it's more like why don't I want to cross the 700 barrier? But those are the two questions. Why can't I? Why am I not crossing the barrier? What do I have against it? And just keep going, keep pulling levers, okay? Okay, what is the ideal preparation time to score 750 plus? There is no ideal preparation time. It totally depends on your starting point. If it's 380, then you're going to need to prepare probably for a year. If your starting point is 650, it could be a few months. Okay, so it's really tough to say. It's going to be different for every person. But you can, so take that baseline test after preparing for a week or two and get a sense of where your starting point. By the way, don't take a baseline test the day you start preparing. You've never seen a GMAT question before, because then you're fumbling through the test as you're taking it. You're not going to get an accurate baseline score. Prepare for a week or two, get familiar with the questions, then take that baseline test. Do I need to master TTP hard questions or master the easy, medium, and focus? I would say mastering of easy and medium at a very high level is the focus for scoring that 730, 760 range. You really want to getting like 95% of the medium questions correct, 100% of the easy questions correct. That'll get you a long way. Do you need to get every hard question correct? Not as much. In fact, we recommend for quant, you could get 60% of the hard questions correct. That'll probably do you. I'd rather see you get 70%, but you don't have to be at 90 to 100% of the hard questions. I mean, if you want to score 770, you do, but you get what I'm saying for 730, 760. Let's see. I forget things that I've learned during the test, especially SC. Yeah, well, this thing about learning them from the ground up will really help. In SC, for instance, everyone is always a singular subject, okay? And you're going to remember that by knowing that one and every are both singular, okay? They're always singular. So every one, even though it sounds plural, is singular. Or why are commas around a non-essential modifier? Because it's a parenthetical thing, so it makes sense we're separating it off with commas. Same thing in quant, like I showed you on the equilateral triangle formula. Look, as soon as you understand how it works with the 30, 60, 90, you're going to remember that forever. So the way to remember these things a lot of the time is learn them from the ground up. Also, practicing applying them helps a lot. On-time practice, once again. If you're used to really applying them, the more practice questions you do, the better you're going to remember how to apply them. Okay, I'm at 32 plus now. Can I get to 760 plus? Yeah, sure. You can. It just keep pulling levers and doing what we're talking about here, and you can get to 760 plus. Absolutely. Should I leave a question if it is taking more than 3 minutes? Probably, unless you're right at the answer. So there's two things you want to notice. How long have you been working on it? Sure. But if you're going to be at the answer in 15 seconds, then stick with it, because, okay, that's a correct answer that's going to take you 2 minutes to get the next time. So how long have you been spending on it, and how does it look? How are things looking with that question is maybe the most important thing to determine whether to ditch a question. I'm unable to attempt the fourth RC passage. How do I get to attempting? You just have to get practice verbal so that you have more time for all the questions. And you might have to read some articles to speed up your reading speed. In the if you're using the course, we have a list of articles, a list of publications in the Intro to RC chapter with a bunch of articles in it. You do a lot of reading, and also just work on verbal. Working on achieving high accuracy, learning the concepts, learning strategies is really going to help. And by the way, learning strategies for verbal questions, like learning reading comprehension strategies, how to go through the passage for different types of questions, learning strategies for weakened questions or sentence correction. These are going to speed you up too, because if you have a strategy, you can just go right to the question. You know exactly what to do. So you're not fumbling around going, well, what do I do next, right? I mean, yeah, we can all get a reading comprehension question correct if we have 20 minutes to do it. But if you have a strategy, then you're going to get it correct much more quickly. What are the most common reasons for scoring a lot lower in the real test than the practice test? Yeah, assuming that they are the same. The most common reason probably is test anxiety, right? So you take the practice test, you don't have a subtext anxiety that you have when you're taking the real GMAT. But there's some other reasons too. One is, and maybe the other most common reason, well, I'll give you two more. One, another is that you fall back in old habits. Under the test pressure, you learned all these SC rules, you learn all these concepts, oh, I know the triangle, this formula for the equilateral triangle, all this stuff. But then when and you know exactly how to, your strategies, you've learned them all so well, and then you're taking the real test, you're nervous, you start doing exactly what you're doing before you started preparing. Okay? Before you started preparing, you were doing all this instinctive stuff, and now you're nervous and you're taking the test, you start doing that again. So your score just drops because you're basically not doing anything you learned. The third thing that is huge is that a lot of the stuff we learn in courses or from other people that are talking about it is really geared toward the official practice test. Like someone will say, well, being is always incorrect. Well, guess where they got that? They got that from the official practice test, okay? Or they'll say having is always incorrect. Where do they get that? Maybe from the official practice test. Or this is how you analyze this kind of question. And then, you notice people's scores drop more in verbal than in quant because they, extreme answer choices, or this is, if it's about two different cities, it's incorrect. Well, all those things happen on the official practice test. So when you go take the official practice, yeah, I'm good. I'm set. This works perfectly. Everything I learned is great. Those things are all based on the official practice test. Of course they work. Then when you go take the real GMAT, it's all different questions. So being is correct, or something about a different city is correct, or whatever it is. So then you're like, gosh, I did everything perfectly, and I didn't get the score I expected because you were preparing for the official practice test, not for the actual GMAT. So you need to get the same score. To get the same score on the real test that you're getting on your practice test, your practice methods have to be general, basic things. You have to learn basic concepts. You have to develop your logical and analytical skills through that untimed practice. Those things are going to cross over. You could even go take the GRE and they're going to work, right? You could take any test. You could go sit for the SAT, you're probably going to score high because you're learning the basics. But if you learn all these specific things that apply just to the official practice test, and they're even in some courses, here's a bunch of questions for you to practice. Yeah, they were based on the questions from the official practice test. You learn all those things. Yeah, you're going to score 760 on the official practice test and 630 on the real test. You go, what happened? Because you were preparing for the practice test. Okay, we're out of questions. Sounds good. Let's wrap it up. So as you see, the theme here is effective preparation works. You got some tips on how to do that. And here's some examples. People that have used our course, okay, with effective preparation. Obviously, if you haven't heard, haven't seen Dalal's debrief, starting at 250 and going to 780. There is the results of effective preparation. First score was 250. Her second score was 350 on the actual GMAT. These are not practice tests. She went and took the GMAT, scored 250. She gets to 350. I'm making progress, right? And then she kept pulling levers to go from 250 to 350 to 4 something or whatever, to 5 to 6, all the way to 780. Just keep pulling levers, right? And these people did it. You can do it too, okay? You can check out the Target Test Prep course. We have the 5-day trial for $1. There's some levers you can pull in there for sure if you're not already using it. And I think you can, if you have questions, you can hit us in the chat or whatever you need to support you to get you to your score goal. But all these people did it. They're people, you're people too. We can all do this. That's the mindset to take. I really appreciate you all coming out today. It's been fun. It's a fun topic. How can we play the game and really rock it? So it was really great to be able to do this, and I appreciate you all coming out. Have a great rest of your day or evening, and till next time.